Kickoff of the 2025 college football season is just around the corner, and the question seems to be SEC or Big Ten. Who's going to be hoisting the trophy at season's end? There may be another, but those two feel like the favorites, helping us break it all down, talk the college football season, and, of course, SEC football. He's one of the best in the business, former Michigan quarterback, and part of the show Crain Company, which does a fantastic job, one of the best. Mr. David Cohn joins us once again. David, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Really excited to talk all things SEC, Big Ten, and much more. And also, my friend, you got an album that just dropped. I want you to plug that. We're going to celebrate you, obviously, this weekend. But, man, you're doing everything, man. You're a jack of all trades these days.
Thank you, man. Chris, I can't thank you enough for having me, man. It's an honor every time I get to join you. And, yeah, we're just over here at Crain Company talking ball, got our season predictions underway now in fall camp. And, yeah, somewhere along the way I decided to release a new country music album, and that's been a lot of fun. So I hope everyone will go check it out. It's called Richest Man in Town.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've been listening to it, man. It's incredible stuff. And, again, excited to celebrate you. David, I want to transition in this 2025 season and really just like the narrative surrounding college football. Again, you are a Big Ten guy. You are a Michigan guy. You speak on it all objectively and fairly, obviously. But the Big Ten has won back-to-back national championships, obviously Michigan, then Ohio State last year. When you look at the two conferences, I feel pretty confident in saying we all agree that the SEC and the Big Ten, they both run the sport. Where do you sit right now? There's this ongoing argument between SEC and Big Ten fans that who's the better conference? Against the Big Ten's got the hardware to show for it. The SEC still feels like the overall depth, and I think both have valid arguments. But, like, where do you sit? If somebody asked you today, what's the best conference in college football, how do you answer that question?
Yeah, I feel like I have a unique perspective on this, being from South Georgia and being raised in those waters, but then going to play football at the University of Michigan. And look, when Michigan offered me a college scholarship, you know, I had no anticipation to go 1,000 miles away from home, but that was a great honor. And that's the winningest program in college football, the biggest stadium. It was kind of a no-brainer. You have to understand here, though, leading up to that, when I really fell in love with college football in the early 2000s, you know, USC was on a big streak. Miami was great. I grew up a huge Florida State fan. Michigan had just won a national championship with Lloyd Carr when I was 10 years old. And obviously the Buckeyes had something special going with Jim Tressel. And so, you know, I didn't and really still try not to think about college football in terms of conference allegiance. Now, I know that's tough for you to hear. You got a show called SEC Unfiltered, and there's a lot of SEC pride, but especially now with teams moving and coming and going and expansion and reduction and all this, it's like, look, I love Michigan football because that's who gave me a chance. That's who I went and fought for and bled for and sweated for. You know, I don't pull for the Big Ten just to pull for the Big Ten when they're playing an SEC school. Like, I pull for Georgia Southern because that's where I'm from. I say all that to kind of prep you here because I do want to answer your question. And I think that the SEC's dominance from the time that I did get to school, you know, and then Florida won that 2006 national championship when we were number 2 in the country at Michigan. The Buckeyes were number 1. We played each other in Columbus. Buckeyes go on to play Florida and Urban Meyer and Chris Leak and Tim Tebow and those boys in the Natty. We went to the Rose Bowl to play USC. Florida won that national championship, even though they were underdogs, and it started this SEC dominant run, right, where Florida State got 1 under Jimbo Fisher and the Buckeyes were able to get 1 under Urban Meyer. But the SEC's run was so dominant that even if they take a step back here, you can still be the best conference in college football, you know? And I think that's what we talk about a lot on Crain Company is, well, what do you mean by best? Or what do you mean by better when you say what's a better conference? Right now, the Big Ten's better, having back-to-back national champions with 2 different schools. But like you said, you brought up the term the depth. I mean, I would still take the middle or bottom tier of that SEC against anyone in the country. Here's how I really think about it is, the top tier of the Big Ten is now compatible with the SEC for the first time since before I played college football, which I think the Big Ten should beat its chest about a little bit. When you talk about, I mean, look, the Buckeyes were the gold standard there for about a decade and a half, and Michigan kind of took a back seat, and Penn State was taking a back seat. And meanwhile, the SEC was racking up national titles with multiple schools. I mean, Georgia got a couple, Alabama got almost all of them, LSU got them a couple, Auburn found one with Cam Newton, all of these different teams. And so now you look at the landscape, you look at programs like what Penn State has coming in 2025. Oregon now in the conference. They're going to be a perennial powerhouse. And then Michigan, what they've got going on, the Buckeyes obviously defending national champs. That sort of top tier is very competitive, I think, with the Georgia, Alabama, LSUs of the world. The question is, how does that middle tier, which of those programs, like Nebraska or USC, who can break through the way Indiana did a year ago? I think someone like Illinois is poised to do that, right? But both conferences are in a really good place. The more interesting question to me is it even possible at this point for a team outside of those two conferences to win the national championship? Clemson's roster right now looks as good as it gets, but Clemson with the ACC sort of in a position that the Buckeyes were in a couple years ago, right? Where it's like, hey, we're kind of carrying the conference. Is anyone going to come help us? All of a sudden, Michigan comes to help. Penn State comes to help. Oregon's in the conference now for the Big Ten. I wonder if anything like that's going to happen for the ACC with the Miamis and FSUs of the world. And I have similar questions about the Big 12.
David, for a moment, I know you said obviously you're not gravitating towards or getting into the conference conversation, which I totally understand, because you are right. There's so much shuffling. One team today that you're pulling against would be a team tomorrow that you're pulling for because they change up so quickly. But I want to go to week one of the college football season. Just humor me for a moment. In the first 2 weeks, really, we've got the Texas-Ohio State game, which I'll be in attendance at in Columbus. By the way, David, my first ever Big Ten football game at a Big Ten facility will be the shoe week one. And then week two, you got Oklahoma, Michigan. I'm curious from your perspective, and especially that Texas-Ohio State game, how important is that game from the SEC's perspective for conference superiority, or does it really matter? Should that even be a storyline in those games?
In an expanded playoff, brother, it really doesn't. I'm sorry. I mean, when we were growing up watching college football, you kind of had to go undefeated to win the Natty or maybe have one loss. Look at what the Buckeyes did a year ago, 10-2. You lose to a 7-5 Michigan team when they throw for 60 yards. You're the embarrassment of college football. There were already questions about Ryan Day, and then you lose to Michigan in that fashion. And what happens? They reel off 4 of the most impressive wins you could ever imagine, and they're the defending national champs. Texas cannot panic if they go up to Columbus and lose a football game. Guess what, brother? You're not the first team to go up there and lose, because that's one of the wildest environments you've ever seen. And right now, I have the Buckeyes winning that game. Now, week two, and I'm telling you all this because I'm already on record this week on Crain Company with our prediction for both of these picks. Right now, week two, I think the most logical pick is to take Oklahoma at home in Norman there, hosting Michigan. Now, there's a lot of cool storylines with that one because Sharon Moore, Michigan's head coach, that's his alma mater. It'll be the game before he has to go on a 2-game suspension. They may be coming in starting a 5-star true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood, but all that's going to go out the window when they start playing football. And this Oklahoma roster is really, really good. And again, I don't think Michigan shouldn't panic if you go on the road and you can't beat an Oklahoma team that has their head coach, Brent Venables, with his back against the wall. There shouldn't be any panic right now in college football. Last year, I watched Texas A&M play Texas the last week of the season with a chance to be in the SEC championship game, where if you win that one, not only are you in the college football playoff, you get a first-round bye. Now, it didn't work out that way for Texas A&M. And similarly with Clemson, 9-3 in their conference, won the conference championship, made the college football playoff. You can't panic after early season losses anymore. You just really can't. Now, if SEC fans and some of your viewers want to say, oh, yeah, we're going to beat our chest when Arch Manning goes and shows out in the horseshoe and beats the defending champs. Yeah, do it. I just don't know, who is that? A Kentucky fan saying that? Is it a random Missouri or South Carolina football fan saying, yeah, man, Texas went and beat the Buckeyes? That's kind of to my point where I don't know how you take pride in that. But for anyone who does, hey, more power to you.
Yeah, David, speaking from the SEC perspective, I know a lot of folks in the conference hate Texas. They also hate Ohio State. So a lot of folks will be very conflicted in week one. That is for sure. Zeroing in on the SEC, obviously, like you said, David, this is SEC Unfiltered, so I want to lock in on the conference. When I look at the league, it feels like it neatly fits into a package, or it feels too easy when I say that the top tier of this conference is Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. And then there's kind of this drop-off, and it's that next group that's got a lot of teams, a lot of volatility. That's where we talk about our college football playoff sleepers. But those 4 I mentioned feel like the favorites. Is it as simple as that for you when you look at the conference? Do you feel like that's the top tier and then there's kind of this gap, or am I making it too easy and one, if not multiple of those teams maybe falls off and somebody else jumps in or should be considered part of that tier one?
Well, in terms of complete roster talent, maybe. Yes, you got this tier and then you got a tier under it. If you're talking about in terms of ability to win the conference and no one in that tier under can win the conference, then no, I would disagree. I could see Texas A&M winning the conference. I mean, South Carolina probably won't, but South Carolina could win this conference this year. I don't know what Lenora Sellers' ceiling is, right? And, do they have enough depth to be able to go and do something like that? You got to prove it to me. I'll just go and tell you right now, I'm not going to pick you to win the conference, but they could do something like that. Now, obviously, and this is especially when we're talking about new quarterbacks starting at some of those programs that have those more complete rosters. New quarterback starting for Georgia, new quarterback starting for Alabama, a new quarterback, I don't care what his name is, starting for Texas. You can't just pencil yourself in to win this league, man. This league is too tough. And while Garrett Nussmeier is the only returning 4,000-yard passer in the country, LSU's got to prove a lot of things to me. I mean, they hit the transfer portal at wide receiver. They're always going to be great at wide receiver. I get that. Half the starters on defense are going to be from the transfer portal. The pro of that is, well, hey, we hadn't been good on defense, so we got a lot of guys in. Brian Kelly's adopting a portal philosophy. The con of that is, well, what's the cohesion of that unit going to be like as we're 2 weeks into fall camp right now? We're going to play football in a couple weeks. So I don't know the answer to that. I know LSU is going to have plenty of athletes running around. Those would obviously be the favorites to win the conference. But I could see some of these middle tier teams really coming up and pushing this league this year.
David, sticking with that top tier, or at least the favorites, if you will, of the favorites, who's your favorite? Who are you buying stock in? Is it Arch Manning in Texas? Is it Ty Simpson in Bama? Is it Gunnar Stockton in Georgia and Kirby Smart? Is it Nussmeier in LSU? Like you said, I think what's so fascinating about the league this year, so many of the top contenders, like you said, are breaking in new quarterbacks. That is inevitably going to lead to chaos because, let's face it, they're not all going to work out. They're not all going to play great at least every single week. But of those top-tier teams, which ones are you buying the most stock in?
I'll tell you what, as I sit here right now, I don't have a winner of the league yet, but I do have Georgia on record at 11-1. And think about how difficult their schedule was a year ago because so many of those marquee games were on the road. Well, the schedule is not necessarily any easier from the teams you have to play, but getting a lot of those programs in between the hedges, most notably bringing Alabama to Sanford Stadium, bringing Texas to Sanford Stadium, like that means a lot. So right now I have Georgia at 11-1. I think Kirby Smart is just such a good coach. He can weather average performances from positions when he needs to. And I've seen him make mid-season adjustments when it really counts. And on this Gunnar Stockton point here, man, look, I get it. I'm biased because I'm a Georgia boy and he's a Georgia boy. He's the pride of Rabun County. I know where he comes out of. But I just remember a time when it was, everyone in the country thought JT Daniels was going to be the starting quarterback for the University of Georgia. Right? 5-star guy coming in from USC. And then all of a sudden, Stetson Bennett is the starting quarterback at Georgia, and everyone kind of laughs. Well, all that kid did was win back-to-back national championships for a program in the first time in 40 years when guys like Matt Stafford couldn't do that. DJ Shockley, David Green couldn't do that. Stetson Bennett did that. So I'm not going to just underestimate Gunnar Stockton because if Kirby Smart sees something in him, then it must be there. And if they didn't fight harder to keep Carson Beck from going to Miami, then I'm a believer. And I would say similar things about Alabama. Like I don't know that much about Ty Simpson, and I don't know all that much about what Arch Manning's going to bring to the table. Obviously, he has more experience than the other two guys, but similar things. I think the rosters are strong enough to carry them to a lot of wins despite average quarterback play. But again, you're not going to win the league with average quarterback play. So one of those guys is going to have to step up and really deliver a la Stetson Bennett a couple years ago.
David, you mentioned that next group of teams that maybe some of them aren't being talked about enough or hyped up enough. Or there's a lot of teams in this conference. What I think is fascinating, there's a lot of reasons you can talk yourself into them, and then there's a lot of reasons you can talk yourself out of them. Heck, that's the teams at the top too. I feel like everybody, which is again going to make for a great season of not just SEC football but college football. Again, of that next group, is there a team or maybe teams that you feel like they're just, for whatever reason, you feel like they're not getting enough love, they're not being talked about enough by folks like us, media around the league, around the college ball world, that you're like, hey, we better start paying attention to these guys now before midseason we're all looking around being like, see, I told you so?
Yeah, you put it in a good way where, you can talk yourself in or talk yourself out. I've been thinking about it as like the pros and the cons are sort of weighing evenly for a lot of those teams, whereas some of the top dogs, the pros outweigh the cons a little bit. And that's like the Floridas of the world, South Carolina, Texas A&M, even Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's still going to have a lot of really good football players. Everyone just sold them down the river the second they got a spring surprise with Nico Iamaleava leaving. But look, I mean, Joey Aguilar is going to come in. I think he's going to be the starting quarterback. Josh Heupel can still coach football. Tennessee's going to win games, right? I understand why they're not picked to win the league right now, but they're still going to be a good football team. But out of that group that you're talking about, I mean, I really like Oklahoma, and I like Oklahoma's chances to beat Michigan at home in week 2. I just think that when we talk about that weight of that pro and con list, the pros start to weigh more. Not only did they bring in a lot of really good transfers, including at key positions. This kid, John Mateer, I've broken down his film multiple times so far this year with him transferring in from Washington State. The kid is as dynamic as it gets, a complete balanced quarterback, and he's coming in with his offensive coordinator. And then you get Jaden Ott to transfer in from Cal, a back who was probably a first, maybe second round projection a year ago. He's been banged up, might even be dealing with another injury in fall camp here. But when we talked to Jim Nagy at SEC Media Days, he said, look, man, he's explosive as he's ever been. And that's just on offense. Look what they were able to do a year ago on defense. I mean, Jalen Moreau and those guys at Alabama didn't even score a touchdown when they went to Norman. And we're talking about a head coach in Brent Venables who already has his back against the wall, and he didn't want to see Texas go to the SEC championship a year ago when it was year 1 in the conference for both programs. So I think Oklahoma is going to be really, really good. That's another one of those teams where if you think you can just completely write them off from winning the conference, I think you're wrong. Now, I understand why they're not the favorite, but they're going to win a lot of football games, man.
So, David, we spent some time hyping some teams up. I want to get your take. And again, I know you guys right now, you're dropping tons of previews, predictions, which, again, everybody tuned in. Go check them out. You guys do a fantastic job breaking down all of these teams across college football. But, David, somebody's got to lose some games. Not everybody can go 8-4 or better. Is there a team, or again, a couple teams that – I think a lot of these teams are candidates, funny enough. Who's going to flop is my question. Because somebody has to, right? Like, somebody's got to lose some football games. Is there a team you look at where you're like, just from what you've seen on film or even a gut feeling where you're like, the way it sets up, maybe it's schedule, I don't feel good about it going into the year. And again, we're going to have, by the way, after all 16 coaches come back, I mean, somebody's probably going to be getting the can at some point. So who are those teams in your mind?
And I know, and this is the part that I hate, because you're talking about guys with families, and these are jobs, and I hate to see anyone lose their job, and especially when you're talking about guys like Mark Stoops at Kentucky, and you're talking about Sam Pittman. I'm the biggest Sam Pittman fan in the world at Arkansas, and a lot of these guys have forgotten more football than I'll ever know. They're really, really good at their jobs, but Vanderbilt is one that's really interesting to me, because Vanderbilt has been the laughing stock of the SEC in football for so long. And then Diego Pavia comes in. And again, I'm a big Clark Lee fan. And I'm a big Diego Pavia fan, man. Gamer of the highest order. Was a gamer before he ever got to the SEC. And all he did when he got in the league last year was say, come on, Alabama, we're going to beat you. We're going to beat Auburn. But there's a lot of talking in the offseason for a team that, they lose to Georgia State a year ago, or am I making that up?
Yes, lost in Atlanta to Georgia State.
And now you're not sneaking up on anyone, so you legitimately need to be better than them that day on the field. Now, I'm not saying they weren't better than Alabama a year ago. Like, you won the game, so you were better that day. I'm just saying there's a lot of other teams who are on the schedule this year, like the LSUs of the world, and Hugh Freeze and Auburn again, who's lost to this kid multiple times, who are going to say, hey, not this year. Look at what they did last year. Look at what they did to Alabama. So you're not sneaking up on anyone already, and all the chirping in the offseason. I think that I'm going to be selling the Vanderbilt stock a little bit. But like you said before, it's that already is not a program that you expect to win 7 or 8 or 9 games every single season. So I'm not answering that like, Clark Lee is going to lose his job. After last season, man, he's probably got really good job security for quite a while, and he should. I'm a big fan of his. But Vanderbilt is one that's interesting where I think a lot of people are buying into the hype because of all the excitement. But the way that the schedule is going to work out, I think they may be in for a rude awakening.
David, I'm going to make you zero in on one team specifically because of who your two co-hosts are, Jake Crain and Blaine Crain. Obviously, big fans of the Auburn Tigers. I'm just fascinated what your take is on Auburn. They are another one where, and we haven't talked about them yet, the range of possibilities for them is just, who knows? The floor and the ceiling, that may be the program where the floor and the ceiling is the furthest apart because it's very easy to fall in love with the roster with the additions they made. Obviously, Jackson Arnold needs to clear quarterback, but you add Eric Singleton at wide receiver. And I mean, what DJ Durkin's done defensively, the way the schedule sets up, if they can take down Baylor in week 1 and get that thing rolling, like could really build some big time momentum. But at the same time, we've seen Hugh Freeze over the first couple of years and it doesn't feel like they've gotten the most out of what they had on the roster to begin with. So again, because you're surrounded with Jake and Blaine every day and you hear about Auburn, you probably know as much about Auburn as probably any team in college football at this point.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated to get your take on what you think Auburn's going to be this season.
Yeah, and before I forget, for any Auburn fans out there, make sure you check out our Auburn season predictions episode dropping next Monday. Auburn and Hugh Freeze in particular are fascinating to me because Hugh Freeze was the Alabama killer when he was at Ole Miss. He got multiple wins over Nick Saban. Obviously gets in trouble there, goes to Liberty, doesn't stop the train, man, like wins a bunch of football games and wins it in a way where he's the quarterback guru, the quarterback whisperer, right? And actually, now that I'm thinking about it in real time, it's a lot of parallels with Jim Harbaugh because Jim Harbaugh came into Michigan as like the quarterback whisperer, had Andrew Luck, and then drafted Colin Kaepernick and got the most out of Alex Smith with the 49ers. And then quarterback play really just didn't develop that much at Michigan early on. Then he recruits J.J. McCarthy and they win 3 Big Tens. They win a national title. Well, Hugh Freeze in a similar fashion was the quarterback sort of guru at these other programs, and that hasn't been a piece that's worked out for Auburn, doubling down on Peyton Thorne the last couple of years. Now you bring in Jackson Arnold. Here's what I'll say about Jackson Arnold. I think about it as a stock, right, that I think Hugh Freeze is buying low with the chance that could sell higher, that stock can go up. I know that's not something that Auburn fans want to hear. There was a lot of really good players in the portal. Hey, let's pony up the dough and let's go get a John Mateer from the portal where I can say, man, I've already seen it. I don't have to buy a stock low. I know that's what Auburn fans want to hear. Look, that's not the reality of the situation. This is the kid who's coming in to play quarterback. So all you can do is hope that stock rises and that Hugh Freeze can get the most out of him. The wide receiver group is going to be as good as anyone in the country. I mean, those two kids are incredible. When you start talking about Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton Jr., they did some good things on defense a year ago that I think they can build off of. As my co-host Jake reminded me of today, though, he said, yeah, but they did most of their good things on first and second down on defense. Like third down is still a problem. Clutch moments are still a problem for Auburn football. And the only way you can stop having clutch moment problems is to deliver in the clutch, right? To find yourself in those moments and deliver. So if you're wanting a record prediction for me, just in advance of our, actually, I won't blow it because we have our episode coming out Monday, but I will say there's a certain team from Athens, Georgia that comes to the Plains this year. And I'm just telling you, I think that the Auburn Tigers get a big one in the Bermuda Triangle in Jordan Hare this year.
I love it. That's calling the big upset early. I love that. We know they're coming. It's just where are those landmines going to be in the college football season? David, not asking you again to spoil any predictions or anything, but when it comes to the college football playoff and the race for the national championship, I mean, it's been as unpredictable as it's ever been. Yet I say that, and I feel like the cream will still rise to the top as it always does. Like you said, it feels like it is a 2-conference race between the Big Ten and the SEC to hoist the trophy. I mean, the SEC's top tier, we talked about Texas, Alabama, LSU, Georgia. You could throw maybe some others in there. The Big Ten's top tier with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon's another one. There's a couple others there. When you look at the playoff, again, I don't know if you've locked in like a pick for a national title winner, but when you look at the top tier, what the SEC has to offer, and the top tier, what the Big Ten has to offer, at least which side do you lean towards as the favorite to hoist the trophy, the SEC or the Big Ten?
Man, that's a fascinating question. I haven't locked in any playoff teams yet. We're penciling these in one team at a time here, and I certainly haven't penciled in a national championship winner. But man, we've been talking about it every day. It's starting to keep me up at night. I know it's fall camp, and I'm starting to like get in that rhythm again. A part of the conversation we had earlier about the SEC. The SEC is not the only conference in this category. This is the most fascinating season of college football preseason that I can remember, because when we talk about these elite rosters around the country, and we already mentioned Georgia, Alabama, and Texas, but throw the Buckeyes in there too, starting new quarterbacks, right? Well, like, yeah, you have a really great roster, but are you going to go full Trevor Lawrence on this thing and win the whole thing as a true freshman quarterback? Or some of them aren't true freshmen, but you know what I mean, first-year starting quarterback, young guys. And then you got this other tier, which Penn State, we hadn't really talked about Penn State too much, and then Clemson in the ACC, outside of the two conferences we've been talking about, I think are parallels with each other, returning a ton of talent, first-round picks littered all over the roster. And those two guys playing quarterback for them, Drew Aller at Penn State and Cade Klubnik at Clemson, have as much experience as anyone. And they got sour tastes in their mouth from a year ago. And also, look, a team that's not even in a conference, Notre Dame, starting a new quarterback with a really, really good roster. They could win it all. I'll say this, man. For the first time in college football, maybe ever, or certainly in a long, long time, I think there's legitimately 12 teams preseason here that could win the national championship. And I've been critical of some aspects of the 12-team playoff, but hey, if you think there's a dozen teams that can win the thing, a 12-team playoff is a pretty good place to start for us figuring it out. And that's what we're going to get come December and January. So I can't wait, man.
David Cone of Crain Company, one of the best in the business. David, one last question, a fun one for you. You can go to one college football game this season in person, just one. Doesn't matter. I'm not asking SEC, just any college football game. If you could only go to one in person this season, which game are you picking?
Brother, you know where I'll be. November 29th, I'd be in the big house watching us make it 5 straight against the Buckeyes, but that's just me.
I love that. David Cone again.
Last year we had our pick, and guess where we went? We went to Tuscaloosa for Alabama, Georgia. And why we picked that one, I mean, that's two obviously premier brands in college football, but it was the first year of no divisions. I mean, that matchup used to happen all the time in Atlanta for the SEC championship, but we said, man, Georgia's going on the road in a true road game to Tuscaloosa. We have to be there. We live streamed the game from Innisfree. 28-0 at one point for Alabama. I started to have pity on Kirby Smart. Well, the joke was on me because they stormed back in that game. Didn't win it, but man, that was a great game to be at.
Yeah, I started questioning myself, David, at halftime for what I paid for that ticket. Was like, man, I'm not getting the bang for my buck I thought I would. And obviously it turned around with the late game dramatics. So again, David, always a pleasure, my friend. Again, you guys do a fantastic job over at Crain Company. Let folks know, in case they've been living under a rock, where they can check out all your work and your latest album, Richest Man in Town.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. I really appreciate it. David Adam Cone on almost all my social medias, X and Instagram and all that. Please go to Crain Company on YouTube. And when you're done watching SEC Unfiltered, check out some of our content. We've got season previews that we recorded throughout the summer with a lot of really great guests that you should check out. We've started our team predictions this week, and we've knocked out Alabama and Georgia. We knocked out Michigan, the Buckeyes. We got Auburn coming up, LSU coming up. And then we also have some week 1 matchups that you should check out with, like you talked about, Buckeyes, Texas, LSU, Clemson, all that. So please check out the YouTube channel over there at Crain Company. And then, personally, I have a new music album out, Richest Man in Town. Got 12 tracks on it, recorded and produced by Dolly Parton's producer, Mr. Kent Wells, Nashville legend. Whatever you think about my songwriting or my singing, I can tell you this much. The music from the session guys playing behind me is as good as you'll ever hear in the world, because they truly are the best, man, in this town. So I hope everybody will buy the album on iTunes or stream it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your music.
David, you're the man. I appreciate you taking the time. Congrats on all your success, my friend, and looking forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you, buddy.